Hey guys, Brooke Whipple here. Welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk about Chris McCandless. Do you remember him? Back in 1992, he was, I think, 24 years old when he hitchhiked all the way from the lower 48 to this spot on the Parks Highway and the Stampede Trail. He walked to the end of this road and into the wilderness, crossed a river in early spring, and found a bus. And in that bus he made his home for about 114 days before he sadly died of starvation. Remember this book, Into the Wild by Jon Krakauer? John told the story of Chris McCandless and his journeys and his adventures. He's a very divisive figure, and 26 years later, we are still having conversations about him and his adventures and his life and death here at the end of this road in the wilderness. We're going to go to the end of the road and take a look at the trail where he ultimately walked into the wilderness. So let's talk about Chris McCandless and what you think about his life and death. Stay tuned.
If I could only fly, I would fly so high, I would kiss the sky, it'd be so, so right, so right, so right. If I could only fly, I would fly so high, I would kiss the sky, it'd be so, so right. So right.
That's the end of the road right there. That's where I'm parked. This is where it all began. Just come off the trail here. I'll show you some of the landscape. It certainly is beautiful and impressive country. Definitely inspires adventure. So this is pretty much what the country he was in looked like. We are right outside the edge of Denali National Park. The bus is, I don't know, it took him 4 days to reach it from here, crossing the Teklenika River, which was really his downfall. And without a map, he didn't really know how to get back out when it became low again in the fall. He could have gotten back across, but he was too weak. And because I had those experiences on alone, where I too was starving, I know what that feels like. I know how drained of energy you get, how incredibly weak you are, that you cannot get out. You can't fathom walking across, 200 yards of earth. And then there is some speculation that he may have poisoned himself with eating potato seeds, wild potato seeds, or eating too many wild potatoes, but which he had been eating before with no problem. But you get into a weakened state mentally, physically, your body just can't take it. And he was probably just, way more susceptible to any little thing that would compromise the already weakened state he was in. So he shot quite a bit of game, lots of squirrels, some grouse, porcupine, and at one point he shot a moose, which turned out to be pretty disastrous in the middle of summer because of the flies and the warmth, and it's just hard to take care of a large animal like that in the middle of summer. But you would have to also imagine he was breaking all the game laws, because you maybe can get some small game. The squirrels and porcupine are probably legal, but definitely not the moose and the grouse. So yeah, he was definitely in survival mode with only a bag of rice and the pair of boots that the guy that dropped him off gave him, because he knew he was ill-prepared to come out here. But just someone who had really idealistic dreams of getting away from it all and dropping off the map, literally, and not having a map and not having the real things he needed to survive out here. So a lot of Alaskans really have a lot of disdain for Chris McCandless and how he came out here unprepared. But on the other hand, I can kind of see that lust for adventure, that wanting to test yourself, or I never would have gone on the Alone series, season 4 and season 5 on the History Channel. You get that. You want to test yourself with very limited gear. You want to see what you're made out of. And but he was coming from the city background mainly. He was just kind of a haphazard adventurer. This is wild country, and you can't just walk out with a pair of boots and a sack of rice and a .22. Be ready when you want to go out and do something like that. Prepare and study, but do it. That's not to say don't do it. His was a unfortunate bad ending, his own fault, but his sense of adventure, I think that's what resonates with people. Because I think a lot of us have that romantic vision going into the Alaskan wilderness and trying to survive. I imagine there was a lot of soul searching there going on, trying to figure out, his life and his path. And I think a lot of people search for that in their own ways, so we can't really fault him for wanting to take on a grand adventure like going into the Alaskan wilderness and trying to survive. Although he lasted 114 days, he did not live to tell his tale, so good and bad here. He died chasing his adventures, but at least he had the adventure. He went for it. So what we can do now is, the book Into the Wild was made into a movie with the same name, and the replica bus that they used in the movie sits at the 49th Brewing Company parking lot. It's really cool to go in. There's lots of photos and memorabilia of Chris and his time out here, so I think we should go visit that. So let's go do that and eat a few more blueberries on the way out. So here we are at 49th Brewing, and we'll go take a look at the bus, and I'll show you inside the cool bar and brewery here. It's very popular here in Alaska. One thing I want to remind you before you pass judgment on Chris is to look into other materials out there that tell his story, and I highly recommend Corinne McCandless's book, The Wild Truth. It goes into their childhood and how they grew up and all the craziness that surrounded them. And then Return to the Wild. This was a PBS documentary done in 2014. Goes back to the bus, interviews Chris's parents and some of his siblings. Very eye-opening. So yeah, you know the saying, until you've walked in someone else's shoes? Yeah, a lot more to the story than just appears in the first book, Into the Wild, where, you know, maybe we didn't get the full story there. Anyways, something to keep in mind.